I will officially call this meeting to order of the Open Space and Recreation Committee. We have,
All right, trying to get a little better light here in this dark room.
yeah, so occasionally I'll see somebody on Zoom. It's like completely dark. I guess someone's there, but you don't know.
Sorry to interrupt you, Dave.
So no problem. So we have at the moment three of us in attendance. We have two, Stephen and Alicia, who have indicated that they are unable to make it this evening. We are still waiting for an appointment of a representative from the Land Trust. I touched base with Rob Aberg, and he says they're sort of in the midst of their annual reorganization, and so they're hoping to get someone designated for this committee soon. He said, be patient. And then we have a new member, Elizabeth, who was just appointed last night by the Select Board. She's obviously not with us yet at the moment. She may or may not have been officially sworn in. If she's not been officially sworn in, then the three of us make a quorum. And so I will assume that that's probably the case. Since unless Elizabeth is able to join us tonight, we have the three of us are it. So the agenda for tonight is primarily to go through the action items and make at least our initial suggestion as to which board or committee or department or individual should be the primary responsible party. So the action item list, as you've seen and reviewed it, for every action item, it identifies one or more, mostly more than one, responsible parties. And wherever there is more than one responsibility listed, our first job here as a committee is to designate one of those responsibility parties as the one that's going to be the primary responsible party, the stuckey, as it were, for seeing to it that that action item gets done. So
quick question. So your committee came up with this list, obviously, and the expectation was that all of these would be carried through.
In an ideal world, yes. And the action items are the previous committee.
Yes.
Kind of came up with all these action items. These are all the things that we thought would be good to do for open space and recreation. Realistically, I don't know that we expect everything to actually be done. It is a 7-year action plan officially, and we did the committee did give some timing ideas, short term, medium term, long term, ongoing. We get a sense of priority as well. So factoring together the timing and the priorities, there are some things that we didn't expect to see any action on anytime soon. Others, which we thought were straightforward, probably could be done. The one thing, and I think I noted this at our first meeting, the one thing that we did not do when we were putting together the action plan was designate one responsible party as being the one to be held responsible for that action item.
Right.
So we are now going to make up for that deficiency. If I had it to do over again, I would have included that in the plan.
No, I understand that. My question is simply that, so the previous committee, after your long time of deliberating on all this, and I guess not only the committee, but then the expectation of this committee is that we are seeing to implementation of all of these items.
Yes, and like I said, right. So the idea is that all these items are at least at the outset of the plan period, which this plan is good for 7 years.
I understand.
Are things that we
think are, I got it. Right. Yes, got it.
We think are good ideas.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we all realize that there's really no no mechanism by which we can guarantee that all these things will be done. There's no penalty for not doing them.
Okay, and then Alicia is, who is she representing?
Alicia is representing the Conservation Commission,
Okay,
and they're certainly
Yeah.
going to be pretty deeply involved in this. And
understood. Yeah.
Stephen Crowley is representing the
yep.
Recreation Commission.
Yeah.
And when you look at this, open space and recreation, those are the two bodies that are perhaps most closely related to all of this. So it's a little bit unfortunate that they are unable to be here with us tonight. But
Okay,
anyway, just sort of thinking ahead here, my thinking at least is that we go through this list, we come up with at least a first cut at the assignment of action items to the primary responsible parties. We will then circulate that list to all of the responsible parties to get their feedback. I mean, we may think something's good for conservation. Conservation may think, no, that's really not within our bailiwick. That we think someone else really should be the primary responsible party. So I think there's room for some give and take back and forth on that. But we've got to start somewhere, and so that's what I think we should be doing tonight.
another thing, sorry, Dave, I also noticed like the Agriculture Commission, is that still in effect? Like that's not in here at all, and I thought that some of them would pertain to that committee.
Yes, I think the Ag Commission got listed as the responsible party at least once.
Okay,
I
right.
saw them. Yeah, I saw them on there, but they're not part of our committee.
No, I mean, this action plan identifies 17 different responsible parties. Only 5 of which are represented or supposed to be represented on this committee.
Okay, I might just missed them then. Oh yeah, I see them on this 5.3/B. Okay.
Yep. So,
I
and
suppose, like,
I'm at a
2.3B, that would have been one where I would have been like, oh, that should be ag on there, but
yeah. So
Dave, can I ask a favor, and if it's okay with Anne Marie too, just because I'm going to be typing our minutes, would it be possible to put these action items up on the screen, so as we go through them one by one, I'm not toggling between a Word document and the spreadsheet, because I do not have it printed out.
yes, that's kind of what I had in mind.
Good.
Actually.
Okay. Thank you.
Sort of my first question is really, in what order do we want to go through these? I mean, we can. There's more than one. I had in the document I sent out, I had had them sort of sorted by topic, but the topic area is a little bit nebulous. It was just my notion of what I thought would be a good way to describe the topic of the action item, and going through the action item list from beginning to end. It's sort of probably the best way to go through it. I mean, listing them by topic was sort of interesting, but the topics don't necessarily relate very well to who the primary responsible party would be. I mean, in some cases, maybe so, but in other cases, maybe not. For example, there's a lot of items related to trails, which might end up being the Trails Committee. But there's a lot of other items which really the topic area doesn't relate very well to the responsible party. Plus, I had associated with some of the items, or I've associated them with 2 or 3 different topics. So probably the best way to go through this is just from beginning to end of the list, starting with goal 1, objective 1.1, and moving on from there.
I like it.
So let me see
Any
if
way works for me, but that sounds like a logical way to go through it.
Yeah, I thought about it a little bit. I think there's really no easier way to go through it than just to go through it from beginning to end. So let me see if I can get that on the screen share here.
I apologize. My parents are anyways, having a little crisis, but I'm here.
Yeah. Okay, so you all see now the OSRP action items on the screen there?
Yep. Not anymore, but we did.
Oh. Let me see. Let me try to bring that back. I had to move it around on my screen. Okay,
Right, so it's like a different format, right?
so I guess let's just kind of go through here from beginning to end. First one is 1.1a, continue to support efforts to work with the Blackstone River Watershed Council and other organizations by establishing points of contact, developing working relationships, participating in regional conferences, and other activities. That's something that we thought probably the conservation, planning, and select board would all be involved with. Who looks like the best one to be the lead?
Conservation.
I'm thinking conservation.
I agree. Yeah. Oh, it's gonna be easy.
Yeah, hopefully some of these will be pretty easy.
Yeah.
The next one that gets, well, again,
Waters.
prioritizing land acquisitions to protect water supply and surface water resources. That also sounds like
Conservation.
conservation would be the
Yep.
lead agency on that. Review and update water supply protection overlay district. That we've assigned to the planning board, and that's entirely appropriate. The planning board does have that. We've looked at that before, and we'll look at it again. Reconciling stormwater regulations with subdivision rules and regulations. Well, I'd make that planning, because planning has done this, or
Yes.
is just finishing this up.
Mhm.
Okay, educational efforts to address non-conforming uses within well recharge areas. Does that sound like conservation?
Conservation.
Yeah.
Outreach efforts regarding non-point source pollution. That also sounds like conservation.
Mm.
Mhm.
Of course, who put those all the little stickers on the drains? Was that DPW or conservation? Do you guys know? No,
I don't
I
know.
don't know. Probably DPW.
that's what I think, yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking that this, but anyways, okay.
Yes.
Monitoring.
Encouraging monitoring and repair of septic systems. That's, the Board of Health has sort of primary responsibility for
I would say
septic.
Board of Health.
I'm making a note as we go along on a
Yes,
spreadsheet
sewer,
I have.
right? Sewer would be the next one.
Pardon?
Sewer for the next one.
All right, what's next?
1.3D.
3D. Yeah, I think that's that's of course, sewer is kind of part of DPW.
Yeah,
these
they
days,
report into DPW, so
but we've identified sewer here, so that's what we'll say. Review and update wetlands protection bylaw. That's obviously conservation.
I would say conservation on the next one too.
Water quality plan. Yeah, that sounds like conservation.
because I think all the select board would be able to do is ask conservation.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes, I won't guarantee that every one of these responsible parties identified in the plan is really appropriate. And I don't remember why we said select board for this one.
Well, perhaps policy changes.
Maybe,
But-
yeah.
And grab.
Okay, so we're on to goal 2. Amend subdivision rules and regulations. Obviously, that's planning.
Space landowners.
Provide information to landowners regarding available mechanisms to permanently protect open space parcels.
I would say planning. What do you guys think?
Yeah, either that or conservation. Like this is current homeowners. I mean, right?
Yeah, I mean,
landowners.
I think the idea here is to, yes, if landowners want to protect their own open space, I mean, this would be providing it, and the assessors are listed here because this is partly providing information on Chapter 61 protections. There's conservation restrictions.
Yeah,
There's various
explain.
kinds of, so yeah, I probably,
Or planning, whatever you guys think. That's a tough one.
yeah, I'm going to say when I was on conservation years ago, I remember that we kind of paid attention to this and made a point of maybe even doing some of this. So I'll list conservation for now. That's, as I said, this is all subject to review and change. If in this case here, if we say this is conservation's responsibility and they say no, we really think it's more appropriate for planning to take this. And
So can we list that as like our secondary, like even on our new list, like kind of take off select board and assessors, and it'll be like conservation primary, and then we appreciate that it might be planning as a secondary.
Yeah,
the next one is going to be similar to me anyways.
Yeah, and I think for this one, assessors have a role in this. It's more a question of who takes the lead.
Okay.
So we'll leave that at conservation for the moment. Monitor and audit existing conservation lands. That's kind of shared. The land trust, the land trust is responsible for their lands, and Conservation Commission is responsible for theirs.
So maybe we have both, and we have the, them responsible for their own land.
Right, that's kind of a shared thing.
Yeah.
That makes sense here.
But except that it says existing conservation lands, not land trust lands. So it's conservation, and my point was for the above one was maybe as a secondary you put Grafton Land Trust, but I think that based on what I'm reading, it's relative to the conservation lands and not Grafton Land Trust lands, correct?
Yeah, it could be read that way.
Yeah, I mean, I always read conservation as both, and that's just me, because Grafton Land Trust is preserving land, and so they're both kind of interchangeable. But I understand what you mean. I mean, obviously
there's conservation lands that are conservation lands. There's Grafton Land Trust lands that are Grafton Land Trust lands.
Right.
I think what we were thinking when we wrote this was that it was intended to cover both conservation and land trust.
Doesn't say that though.
No, it doesn't say that, but I'm pretty sure that's what we were thinking when we wrote it.
Yeah.
And that's probably why we wrote conservation and land trust, because among other things, there are conservation restrictions that are held by the land trust, and there are conservation restrictions held by the town. So yeah, on this, I'll say I'm pretty sure I do remember that our intent was that it be both, and perhaps that suggests rewriting this a little bit just to clarify that.
Only because your next item is talking about encroachment, and Grafton Land Trust is not on there. So 2.1C relates to encroachment, and your next one is how are we going to enforce the encroachment, and GLT is not on that. So
yes, and in fact, if you go back up to the objective under which this is listed, that's right.
Mhm.
Because
So
the objective
that's my
is
point, kind of with like the 2. That's why I said in 2.1B, you could have like a primary and secondary, but if you don't want to do that, that's okay. You can do whatever you want. But then in 2.1C, you kind of have to go with the same theory that there's going to be a primary. And then if you look at D, it's enforcing C, right?
Yeah.
And the GLT is not on there. So I would think that both should be maybe conservation, but you could put as a secondary under the C, GLT, I suppose.
Yeah, and I was just noticing the objective under which this is listed. The objective is specifically for town-owned open space resources.
Yes, I know.
So yeah, and I think that, that basically does,
Does that eliminate the land trust then?
I think that that sort of tends to suggest that for C, the primary responsibility is with conservation.
Yeah.
The land trust to protecting their own lands. I don't know off the top of my head. I don't remember if that appears anywhere else in this list.
But at least then that's consistent with your next item that says
Right.
develop the enforcement, and it's going to be conservation, of course, because
Yeah, so-
the above.
Right, so we'll, we'll by and large interpret these objectives 2.1-X as relating to town-owned conservation land.
Okay.
Yeah. So moving on, protecting ecologically sensitive lands, prioritizing land acquisitions.
So both of those are conservation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And protecting Grafton's farms. Now this is, and I'd noticed this before as I was looking at this 2.3-A. Talks about working closely with the Ag Commission, but it then does not list the Ag Commission as a responsible party.
But did we have the Ag Commission then? I know there was a period of time we didn't. So maybe this overlapped with a time period. I mean, time flies by so quickly. You guys are probably going to tell me the Ag Commission has been around now for like 15 years, but it seems like yesterday. It hasn't been long, right?
It hasn't been 15 for sure, but this was when I was looking through the list here, that's what I thought was, I mean, this might, both of these, certainly the second one might really be the role of the Ag Commission, but I haven't read their charge, so I don't really,
Yeah, I didn't
So
either.
like I'm looking at, conservation assessors. I understand those other entities, not GLT, not select board.
Who does the Agricultural Commission report into? Is it the select board?
Good question.
I
I didn't
don't
look it up.
remember.
I just had a question because I just felt like I didn't see them in spots like this.
Mhm.
And I thought that, this might be their charge, again, I didn't look it up. so-
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I'm thinking because they're a committee, that maybe the appointing party should be the one to say, this is now this is part of your charge to, these objectives. So
Yeah.
let's say, for example, it's the select board, which is kind of what I'm assuming.
I'm gonna look it up.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, so, so it would be the select board's responsibility, but the select board, because the Ag Commission is, their appointment, we can then go to their charge and add these objectives as part of their charge if they're not on there.
So 2010, it's only been 11 years, not 15.
Okay.
Thank
It
God.
seems like yesterday to me.
Right, so do we want to propose that these two objectives under protecting, or these two action items under protecting Grafton's farms, do we want to propose that the Ag Commission be the lead party on those? And subject to change, but it sounds like maybe this is, these are two things that the Ag Commission might be wanting to take the lead on.
I think so. Here's their purpose is, not limited to the following: service facilitators for encouraging the pursuit of agriculture in town, promote agriculture-based economic opportunities, act as mediators, advocates, educators, and or negotiators on farming issues for established town committees, blah, blah, blah. So, I mean, it seems to me that's their charge.
So I can go either way. We can direct it to the Ag Commission, or we can go through the select board if we feel like.
Yeah, it doesn't tell me who, it must be through you guys, Doreen. I mean, it doesn't say who they report to, but.
I'm just saying if we want to specifically add these things to their charge, and, and then say, kind of call them in or at least the chair and say, hey, based on open space and rec and
yes,
the, select board wanting to get these projects done. So
yeah, great.
Yeah, either way, whatever you guys think. If I mean, I don't know anybody on the Ag Commission, so I just don't know if we put this on there, what else they're working on and how they will prioritize. But maybe that's okay.
Yeah, I think, I think I would recommend that we propose that the Ag Commission be the lead party in both of these.
Okay.
We can work, the select board can, work with the Ag Commission. You guys can kind of decide whether that really fits in their mission, and
Mm.
we can push back on it, maybe change it, but for now, at least, these both sound like the Ag Commission ought to be the lead party on them.
Looks like, I'm just looking at their agendas and minutes, and it's pretty limited, so maybe they need some direction, and this might be good.
Right.
Okay,
Let's give
good.
them some work to do, right?
I mean, just quickly looking at their, yeah, maybe.
And Dave, thank you for just pointing out too, you're right that we just need a lead. It's not that these
Yeah.
committees or departments are going to be working in silo. It's just that they're going to sort of own it.
Yep. All we're trying to do tonight is propose or identify who should be the lead on each of these items. And they are, as you can see, most of them have listed multiple boards, committees, et cetera. The idea is that, they all share, they all share in the work somehow. It's related to their work, but, the question for us tonight is who takes the lead. Okay, so moving on, protecting land resources vital for the community, strengthening low impact development language. I know that this is on the planning board's list of things to do. And we've done some of that. Conservation is also involved as well. Probably planning is the lead on that.
I think so.
I think probably for all three in that
Yeah.
section, but
Yeah,
you'd know better than me, Dave.
I think so too, just from reading them.
Let's at least for now, let's say that those three all do sound like planning.
Mm. Okay.
All right. Work with
Okay, so we're preserving Grafton's town character. Work with town officials to update the master plan. Well, the planning board basically takes the lead on that.
Yep.
And the planning board has actually begun to discuss moving forward on that. Revise and/or update the open space and recreation plan prior to expiration. Now that's
planning.
something that there really wasn't, the last time around when we started this work on updating the open space and recreation plan, there wasn't really any one board or committee or department that took the lead on that. One might propose that this committee sort of take the lead on that, involving obviously all these various other boards and committees.
I will say that I'm on the ARPA committee, and so I just am pulling this up because I just met on Monday regarding this. Recreation put a light item about recreation fields and facilities master plan, looking for funding for that. So that was recreation. And I'm not seeing the spot right here, but yeah, the open space and recreation plan.
So you mean as part of our charge, Dave? Like we would be responsible for this?
Yeah,
mean-
at least, right, at least as it appears to me today, that this committee is probably the one that's in the best position to, and this is not something we even have to begin thinking about for several years.
Mhm.
But for the time being, I mean, this committee is intended to, to be an ongoing committee, at least for the next several years, mainly just to just to, sort of monitor the progress of this action plan. But I don't know of another board or committee that would seem to be most appropriate, unless maybe we think that this could sort of fall into the planning board's bailiwick as the lead board on this. But open space and recreation, I mean, there's the two commissions that are most closely related to the topic are the conservation and recreation.
Right.
And the plan sort of, the open space and recreation plan covers both of those kind of equally. So it's hard to say if we wanted to task one of them with being the lead on this, which one would it be?
I would think recreation, but again, especially,
Yeah, I do too.
especially since they've asked for funding for it. But
So what we can suggest that recreation be the lead agency on this, and they can push back if they don't think it's appropriate.
Yep.
That's true for everything that we're doing here, that
Exactly.
we're making a proposal, and anybody who, if they think they're being assigned something that's inappropriate, they can push back and we can rethink. Just in general, although we didn't really identify this committee in any of these responsible parties, it may be that there are some action items that we think probably should fall within this committee's responsibility as the lead, but I'd like to avoid that as much as possible. But if necessary, we can play that role.
I think the next one
Update.
should be the historical, yeah.
Inventory of scenic lands and special places, historical.
Yep.
Help build awareness of this. Conservation select board. I'm not sure on the
Or-
next one, whatever you guys think.
3.1D, coordinate with historic commission to help build awareness. That we didn't list historical commission there, but this sounds like maybe the historical commission should be the lead on it, coordinating with these other boards. Does that make sense?
Yeah, except it would.
Weird
it
how
would
it's
have
worded.
differently.
Yeah, it's the beginning, the wording is kind of weird, but the rest of it, other than coordinating with the historical commission, the rest of it would seem to fall under historical, but given that you're asking them to coordinate with themselves, it'd be weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, maybe the wording of this item really should have been historic commission to coordinate with other relevant organizations, because otherwise, who is, as it's written, the way you read those words, the question is, well, who is supposed to be coordinating with all these organizations?
Mhm.
Right,
It's
and
really more like
the
these
rest of it is like
organizations.
building awareness of the historical significance of Grafton's, I mean, the rest of it is historical commission, of course, right?
Yes,
So maybe it's
Yeah,
just
so-
weird wording, yeah,
I guess one shouldn't
that's okay.
try to read more into this wording. I mean, to take it literally, because some of these were sort of, we wrote those kind of off the cuff, and that sounds good enough. We weren't
So
thinking
even though
ahead
they're
to-
not listed on there, probably because of the wording, I think it should be
Yeah.
historical commission, just with a different wording, that's all. In my opinion.
So we'll add the historic. Oh, come on.
I will be back in 1 minute. I have to let my dog out. So
Okay.
I'll be right back. You
Okay.
guys can move on without me.
All right. Moving on to the next page, I've got. Okay, 3.2A,
Historic commission's design guidelines, ensure
that's planning. Explore zoning bylaw amendments and other land use policies and programs. That also sounds like planning. Zoning bylaw amendments, certainly.
I
Other
guess
policies
so.
and programs, yeah.
As long as we think that they're gonna do that, yep. Approved maintenance of Grafton's active and passive recreation. Okay, create trails subcommittee. Oh, that's funny. That's conservation, huh? I would have thought recreation for that. 5-year capital improvement for all recreation. Yeah, recreation. Multi-year funding plan to finance better management of conservation and recreation land. So the first one, I guess I would have thought recreation, and certainly the second one should be recreation. But I guess since it says via conservation committee, I'm not sure that the conservation committee is doing much about trails, are they?
I don't really know. I think, you know, they probably were put on here on the assumption that most of the trails, or at least the trails that are under control of the town, tend to be on conservation land.
Okay,
So I think that was the thinking here.
right.
And one of the things that we might do here, noting down under 4.2-A, where we list a trails committee, we might sort of identify the trails committee as being the lead agency on that, on the assumption that a trails committee gets created, whether the trails committee ends up being created via the Conservation Commission or some other way. So, you know, I do think that, you know, anything that looks to us like something that should be all about trails, we should probably say that the trails committee, which doesn't yet exist,
Right.
but a trails committee should be created and should be the lead on various items.
All right, so I guess to 4.1, I guess if it's, like you said, if it's town owned, then it should be under conservation, I suppose. I probably would have thought about recreation there, but it's okay. And the next one should definitely be recreation, and then the multi-year funding plan to finance.
You guys on the first three, the 4.1?
Yeah, kind of. We're thinking conservation, then recreation. We're kind of on the third one.
I would say probably recreation for the
First one.
for C. And
Yeah,
yeah,
which
Does
is what I was working on PS 20 years ago on recreation. Still at the same juncture, but you know, this at the time, or more than 20 years ago, I suppose, we were working on this on recreation. So I think recreation.
Yeah, for C, 4.1C.
I think so. I mean, I think
Yeah.
conservation's going to have their hands full with what we're putting at them, you know,
Yeah.
so this is a good recreation one.
Yeah, you know, and again, you know, 4.1C does sort of, it's intended to cover both conservation and recreation lands. Probably better management of the lands is probably that's more going to involve recreation. But I don't know. Somebody, we got to say somebody's the lead on it. So I think recreation sounds okay to me.
So I guess given that the next one that we don't have a trails committee and that will fall under conservation, we think, then maybe it is conservation there. I think
Yeah,
the next one should be
right. 4.2A sounds like
conservation.
that sounds like conservation.
yeah,
I think B should be recreation.
yes.
And then I don't know about the next one. I guess, I mean, if that's, I would think that will be recreation, but if you think it's conservation, then that's fair enough. I mean, GLT is doing such a great job with their whole.
They are. I was just thinking that.
They're killing it. Yeah. So whoever hops on board with them, it's good. They're going to make their job easy.
So right on C, does that sound like recreation more than conservation?
It does to me.
I think so too. I mean, that's what their job is, right? To like let us know about all the available resources, I think.
Yep. That makes sense to me.
Okay, good.
Yeah, we don't have to be, we don't have to limit ourselves to just the, like in this one here, all it says is conservation, but we're allowed to add to that, which we just did. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So the next one, I don't know if that's conservation or DPW.
Parking and conservation properties. DPW is probably going to do the work if there's any work to be done, but it's basically, I think it's probably up to conservation to say, we want some parking here.
Okay. So
Yeah,
this next,
I agree with that. Sorry, it took me a minute to kind of think of both, but I agree with conservation for A.
I feel like B is kind of back up to that, the hashtag above where it was recreation.
Yes, 4.3B looks a lot like 4.2B.
Yes.
Although if you've got Grafton Land Trust on there, which you do, I mean, they do that. I just don't know if they do
Yeah.
it for conservation as well, right?
Right, that's one that I think probably what we were thinking when we made this, put this on the list, was that we were thinking of some way to bring it, bring all the trails together, get one comprehensive map, and recognizing that the land trust knows a lot about trails on their property, and land trust also knows quite a bit about trails on the town property. But I guess maybe this is one of the things that we were thinking maybe a trails committee would be good for.
Yes, of
To try to
course.
bring it all together.
Yep. Can we list them as the primary even though they don't exist yet?
I think we can.
Right.
Keyword yet.
Exactly. I mean, I think a trails committee, it's a great idea to kind of bring the two together, right? Conservation and GLT, what they're doing. Yeah.
Yes, that may be one reason why we thought a trails committee would be good to create. That they could be sort of be a one-stop shop for everything trails.
And they would take that off the GLT. They do so much other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So if we have enough interest on the part of whoever to actually establish a trails committee, we've got a mission for a trails committee here.
Okay.
And similarly, we can think of some other trail related items in this list that would be most appropriately headed up by a trails committee. Anyway, 4.3C here, increasing recreation opportunities. That sure sounds like recreation.
Yeah. All accordion trail status made available to
4.3D, coordinated trails data. That also sounds like a trails committee.
Yeah.
Right. I think so too. Yeah.
Okay, where are we at? 4.4A. Blackstone River and Canal, parklands and recreational opportunities.
No, I guess recreation.
No, I don't know
Yeah,
what's
that
going
sounds
on.
more like recreation than anything else.
Yeah. I don't know that there's anything going on with this, by the way.
Yeah, I know there's some activity going on regarding the bikeway along the Heritage Corridor. The planning department, not so much the planning board, has been, I should say, Chris, the planner, has been telling the planning board that he's been working on the bikeway, but that's.
Oh, good, because it's been a long time we've been talking about this.
Yeah, I
Yep.
think
But there is some movement on that.
Okay, good.
All righty. Development management plans and strategic goals for conservation lands and active recreational facilities. under the objective of planning for year-round active and passive recreational use. So that, this is another one that sounds like recreation.
Yeah, I think so too.
Me too.
Hunting and trapping, according to TCR and stalking, develop plan to make. I don't know anything about hunting, trapping, and fishing, so leave that to you guys. That's out of my wheelhouse.
Mine too.
Yes. Both of these,
Considered recreational, right?
They're not on there.
I guess. I'm not really sure where best to put this other than conservation. Although conservation is really,
Public available data, hunting,
Yeah,
trapping, fishing.
conservation, to my knowledge, doesn't spend a lot of time looking at fishing, hunting, and trapping.
Yeah. Does
No,
any, that's a thing, like.
I think, yeah, I think that's recreation. People would consider that recreational.
Maybe.
Yep, so we can call that recreation.
Maybe Steve is a hunter, trapper, or a fisher. And
Or Elizabeth.
yeah, pretty sure I know the answer to that. By the way, I did text her, and she did not get sworn in yet, and she had a death in the family, so
Oh,
she's
Well-
not ready to be on yet, unfortunately.
We will excuse her for tonight.
absolutely.
All right, so on fishing and hunting and trapping, we will suggest that that's within the recreations bailiwick. And if they don't like it, they can say, no, actually, we think it's somebody else.
Mm.
All righty, moving on to goal 5, expanding recreation and conservation resources.
Oh, here it is.
And here's, this is another one that's hard to, it's hard to assign to anyone, because if we're talking about land acquisition for recreation and conservation purposes,
It's not going to be land trust, I'll tell you that.
no,
Only because we went through this not too long ago. So this is a big item. Like, this is an important one, in my opinion. Because
yes, and
know-
this, when I look at this, I don't know that this really is entirely a single board. This might be perhaps best thought of as jointly between conservation and recreation. Recreation can, and maybe this is actually not a single priority list, but more like 2, because I can see us having, from recreation's point of view, a list of potential land acquisitions that would be good for recreation purposes. I can see from conservation's point of view a list of land acquisitions that are good for conservation purposes. Those lists may partly overlap, but not entirely. They may also, the respective bodies may prioritize them differently. But it's probably a good idea to have some sort of assessment from both recreation's point of view and conservation's point of view, what, kind of a prioritized list of potential acquisitions.
I mean, not to make this complicated, that sounds fine. But this would be the item that I would say there should be like a subcommittee, whether it's not Trails Committee, but this is an issue that part of the reason that I hopped on this is because I don't think that we are looking at this, collaboratively. I don't think that as a town we're looking at this, which is fair
Right.
enough. Conservation's got a lot going on, recreation, like everyone's got a lot going on, right? So I think it could almost be another committee. So perhaps we could say, to your point, could be conservation, could be recreation, but maybe my recommendation from this committee would be that there would be some sort of a subcommittee an offshoot of those two perhaps that would just purely be looking at, what's out there, what should we be looking at in terms of like coming out of 40, some sort of, people who are getting tax title properties and so on and so forth. And, yeah,
Yeah, in fact, if you wanted to expand it slightly beyond the open space and recreation context, there's also potential land acquisitions for other municipal purposes that need to be factored in as well.
right.
And so maybe to build on your suggestion, maybe what we ought to recommend is that a committee of some sort be established and that would look at potential land acquisitions for various purposes and sort of try to take a comprehensive look at that. And we would want this committee to get input from a recreation perspective, from a conservation perspective, from others.
Yep.
But maybe a separate committee as the lead on this topic would be the best move.
I think so, because it's a lot of work, I suppose. It's like knowing what's out there, first of all, knowing what's protected, knowing what it might be coming up, and then knowing what's valuable, right? Valuable to either recreation or conservation or maybe land trust.
Yes.
So, yeah.
And
So-
Dave, wouldn't this, or both of you, wouldn't this feed into the master plan as well? I mean, something like this, because if you're, identifying these potential land acquisitions, you're thinking more strategically, and so when
Right.
I like that, I'm thinking
Mhm.
if you're, kind of looking at the 20,000 foot, view of the whole project, well, that's sort of what the purpose of the master plan, to my knowledge, is as well. So that might also be, if you're still following me, it may, if we decide not to form another committee, we could always make sure that that is identified, or that is something that could be identified out of the master plan.
Hmm.
Yes, quite so. The master plan would certainly include something along these lines. The master plan would either incorporate a list of parcels, a priority list, or would identify that as a task. And again, identifying it as a task would just be kicking the can down the road.
Right.
And I think it's probably sufficient for us at the moment. And this is something we'll probably want to try to develop the idea further in discussions with the various other boards and committees. But yeah, I do agree that this connects to the master plan in some fashion. And if we identify right now, for the moment, and we can refine this as we continue our work, but for right now, we can identify this as something that's really needs its own committee.
Yeah. I think, if a trails committee and a committee of this sort came out of this, I think that would be fabulous.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
it would just complement conservation, recreation, GLT, et cetera. Yeah.
Now that I reflect on my my thinking in preparation for this, at some point it did cross my mind that this particular action item might best be a committee that's distinct from any of the ones that are listed.
Great.
So I think that's consistent with what we've kind of converged on here. So for now, we'll just say that this is going to be a new committee, name and details to be figured out a little bit later. But I think you're right. It's really to take the view that this action item sort of anticipates or talks about really needs to be somebody other than any one of the boards listed.
Great.
Okay, outreach program when planning the townwide trails. This sounds like a trails committee to me. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
All righty.
I thought that the next one should also fall under that new committee.
Yeah, that's the new committee again.
Great.
Make sure I make a note of this here. All righty, where are we? Identifying gaps in the trail network. Sounds like a trail committee to me.
Mm,
Although that,
recreation too.
Right.
Create a Grafton Trail loop and layout preferred location, begin securing trail. There's Disability Commission could also be included in this, but
the Disability Commission and item A there. Gaps in the trail network, or no, programs for all age groups.
yeah, potentially like underserved population, but they won't be the lead either way, but I mean,
Right,
Yeah.
so you can see. Okay,
is underserved.
I
let me
would say
see.
recreation for B, C.
B, yeah, B sounds like recreation.
Yeah,
C, is that recreation as the lead, but we should
Yeah.
include the Disability Commission there?
maybe. Gaps and trail network that might be filled with new. And then the last one could be the Trails Committee for sure.
Yep.
I mean, maybe even the A could be Trails Committee.
Right. And the middle two are recreation,
Hmm,
Yeah, Trails Committee, recreation,
trails committee.
right. C, we said is recreation as the lead, but the Disability Commission should be involved. Is that the one we said?
Well, if we're, yeah, but if we're just putting the lead on right now, it would just be recreation.
Right, the lead will be recreation, but if we think disability is involved in this, I'll add them to the list of.
Yeah, you might as well include them. I mean, I know that
Yeah.
Recreation tried to make some changes in some of the parks and so yeah.
Yep.
I think that they could have benefited from the advice of maybe the Disabilities Commission.
Yeah.
After going to see what they did.
Yeah, like, with any of these, if we think of another board or commission that ought to be involved, even if
Hmm.
not the lead, we can add them to the list.
Hmm.
So D, creating a Grafton trail loop.
I think that's the Trails Committee too.
Yeah,
And layout preferred location. I mean, conservation and GLT obviously as well, but would help. But I think the Trails Committee could do something like that.
yep. All righty, let's see. Five.
So fun just delegating responsibilities to other people. I love this committee.
Yes, we want to make as little work for ourselves as possible here.
Of course, I'm going to be on these committees that are the new ones. But anyway.
I mean, we
Like,
all
oh,
have
we're
enough
on the
other things
committee.
we're
That
doing.
sounds fun because I don't do enough, right? Ah,
All right. All right, moving on to 5.3 then, transfer of development rights. That is probably planning as the lead agency because transfer of development rights would be, it sort of starts out at least as a planning type thing in consultation with ag and conservation.
I think next one should be the Ag Commission.
Yeah, B is an ag commission. Well, we're getting fairly close to the end here. Amend flexible development rules. Yeah, that's planning.
Yeah.
Establish an open space recreation site committee.
So that's actually kind of what we were talking about up above, no? I'm not sure. That might be that same committee from 5.1.
Yeah, I think that really is that is the new committee, and this, I think that new committee, comes in here from a couple of different angles, but this certainly looks like that.
To use really open space. Yeah, I think that's great. Yeah. Because that's exactly what happened, right? During that land came out and we didn't have anyone that was looking at this and it was just a bunch of ad hoc volunteers trying to like at the last minute, figure this out. So that's great.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
perfect.
as you know, as it is, we just tend to look at these, particularly, lands coming out of chapter 61. We sort of look at each one in isolation and don't really,
Yeah.
we don't have a good way of saying this is better than some other future. And it is difficult because you don't know what's going to come out of chapter 61 or when.
Right.
But we should have a better approach, a better idea of looking at it in a broader context than we do. So and I think that's substantially that's what this was aimed at.
Yeah, it's great.
And Pleasant Street would be a perfect example,
Yeah.
committee
another
of
one.
what we're
Exactly.
trying to avoid, right?
Yeah. Perfect expand the system of townwide trails provided by.
So 6.1-A. Explore options for use of the Grafton Upton Railroad right of way for a multi-use trail.
Wow. Section south of-
That's probably sort of thinking that maybe someday the railroad will go away. Because
Okay,
right now
so
the railroad right of way is being used by the railroad.
okay, and that's the active rail. That's what I was wondering. Is that's our current active railroad?
Yes.
Okay, so yeah.
So it may be that this item was originally, this idea was originally written at a time when the railroad was not actively operating.
Right.
Mm.
And maybe that would be recreation or trails, and that's definitely a long-term one.
Yes. And and then this whole thing all about the Grafton Upton Railroad right away, and then at the very end it says, "Oh, explore other options for townwide trails as well."
Oh, there's that.
Yeah, does that sound like more like a recreation thing?
It's
than
either
anything
the
else?
recreation or the trails. Yeah, you can pop it on recreation, I suppose, because I'm not sure that's going to happen anytime soon. Story.
We'll hand that off to recreation for now.
I think 6A is DPW.
I was going to say conservation. That's funny, but whatever.
But yeah.
Yeah, conservation, I believe, did work with DPW, but it was kind of at conservation's initiative to
I
do
see.
the waterway
I
identification
thought
signs.
DPW made the signs.
Probably. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think, yeah, right. So conservation was the lead on that. DPW did
Okay.
obviously help
The next
out.
one's definitely DPW.
Yeah. And they're already doing that.
Yeah.
Yep. Road safety education program. Who's the lead on that?
The police.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Oh, town trolley. Land acquisitions to purchase parcels that increase.
Prioritize land acquisitions.
I think that would be that new committee, that open space, whatever that subcommittee is. But I guess you could put it under like conservation, but again, that was something on that Pleasant Street property that we were, looking at. It was going to connect to a lot of things, and none of us knew how to pursue that.
Yeah, so who's?
I think if we we're going to have that new committee, this would be perfect for them.
Yes. Because we can't really go anywhere else.
And if they're looking at the overall, like what's available, what's
Right.
potentially going to be available,
Right.
you get to see it all on a map. It's great.
All right, let me see.
I love the town trolley idea.
Right?
Gosh. I don't think that would be that expensive in terms of like worth to the community.
Probably not. We could even make it electric now that we have the charging stations. Hey,
We'd probably get a grant for it.
probably.
Hey, we're on it, Anne Marie.
So let's see.
Where's the
Where
town
we at?
trolley? Oh, it's charging at the library.
At the charging station at the library.
All right,
I did
six
ask
one-
Evan the other night at the first meeting I went to this week, about the charging stations, if they're free and if they'd remain that way. So he thought yes.
Good.
So who's the lead on the town trolley?
Oh, I'm not even looking at.
Oh, yeah.
Are we down? Where can the neighborhood? Wait, are we down farther?
Oh,
Where? Oh, right
did
here.
we miss something? Yeah. Oh, that's,
Six
I'm
four-
I'm
Oh,
skipping ahead here. We're
I don't know.
back on,
No, I think we got, no, you're right. We're down at the
Oh,
tree.
Yeah, we're at 6.2E.
I missed something here in my notes.
That may be like an EDC thing, actually.
I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
Dave, what did you miss?
What did I miss?
So we thought that 6.2D maybe is that new committee,
Yeah.
the open space, whatever committee. And the road safety was potentially going to be the police. That's 6.2C.
Yeah,
And then DPW for B and conservation for A.
right. What did? Okay. Yeah, so
Got
the,
I think the trolley EDC.
I do too.
there we go. All righty.
You agree?
The Worcester to Providence Bikeway.
Planning.
So that's part of that same project, right? Yeah. Trail and proposed routes and destinations.
That could be that new committee too, B.
Yeah.
Or
Like the
or
Trails
the
Committee?
Trails Committee.
Yeah, I think the Trails Committee. Trail bikeway and other connections. I mean, that's kind of like a hard one because
You have to have other towns be willing to work with you.
well, and I think we're the missing link. They already have it, Millbury has it, and then Uxbridge it picks up again. We're like the the problem child. Oh, trail bikeway and other connections. I don't know. I don't know about planning. I mean, that wouldn't be recreation, or I'm not sure
I
about.
think it's planning.
Okay,
Sounds like something Chris McGoldrick would be working on.
okay.
So that's six
So I
point
don't
two
know
C
if the
here.
planning board, it may be planning department more than planning board.
Hmm.
Yeah.
If we're specifying, between the two.
Yeah, one thing that we didn't make clear when we wrote this plan up was to distinguish between planning department and planning board.
Right. I mean, like Economic Development Committee wouldn't be bad to be on these objectives too on 6.3. Again, we're looking, I know, for the primary, but
Yeah,
it's all trying to bring folks in here, right?
okay, where are we at?
6.4.
We're near the end of the list here.
Grafton Trail Loop, Greenbelt.
Grafton Trail Loop.
I feel like we already talked about the trail loop up above, but Greenbelt Master Plan. I don't know.
It sounds like a group of a bunch of things we've already discussed. I'm trying to,
Definitely, the trail loop was up above. That was the trail committee. Green Belt Master Plan laying out possible easement routes. Oh, I don't know.
I would say between all those,
Of course, I mean, under the objective, the bold print, indicates securing greenbelt along water bodies in Grafton, which would be conservation, right? As opposed to like then A doesn't, doesn't make mention of any water bodies, I suppose, that we'd have to be worried about. Are there more under it, Dave? 6. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Let's put
Secure
them all up there.
Silver Lake, Shoreline, Quincy.
Conservation.
Yeah, I mean, this objective is to secure a green belt along the water bodies. So,
Yeah, I think probably conservation.
I think they're all conservation.
yeah.
Me too. I mean, it sounds like when you read the individual ones, we could put it under different areas, but if you look at the overlying thing, it's definitely
Well,
conservation.
so if we say that's conservation can say, well, we're going to delegate this to the Trails Committee, or we're going to push
Sure.
back and say, we don't want it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think you're right. This sounds like conservation is the lead agency on all of these. Again, because it's particularly tied to a green belt along water bodies, and
Right.
that's within the conservation's bailiwick.
Yep.
So I do believe we have made it to the end of the list. And we've identified the lead agency or lead party on each one of these. And for our next magical trick, I think, would want to circulate this, the assignment of lead agencies to all of the interested parties. And what I was kind of thinking about putting together was a sort of a memo of some kind to each of the responsible parties that we've identified as lead, basically listing out, these are the things that we think you should be the lead agency on, or the lead responsible party on, and circulate that for their review and comment, along with a list of everything sorted by lead agency, so everybody can see what was how we've parsed out all of these.
Yeah.
But specifically, I want to give each one a list of, here's what we assigned to you, and then here's the list of everything and who we assigned it to. I can put that together in fairly short order here. And this is, of course, this sort of our first cut at it, in the sense there were only 3 people involved in this, and in particular, only 2 of the boards, the planning board and the select board, are represented in this discussion tonight.
Yeah.
We are obviously we would like feedback from, we've assigned stuff to conservation, we've assigned stuff to recreation, and in fact, ultimately, everybody to whom we've assigned one of these items, we'd like their feedback to say, yeah, we agree with this, or they want to push back on it, and that's fine. This is our first cut, like I said, and subject to refinement as needed.
Yeah, it's fair enough.
I've made a note of everything that we've assigned here. I'll put together a document that similar to the documents we've already circulated with the action item lists, but this one will be organized by the lead responsible party for each of the items.
Great.
Great.
Thank you.
And I think it's a really good first attempt. I mean, I think overall we're leaning very heavy on conservation, and so I would anticipate a little pushback from some of those items. And I think also maybe once we get that feedback and we have more people involved at this meeting, we might come, I think everything will basically shake itself out in terms of balance for everybody. Because what I don't want to do is put everything on one department or one committee and then things don't get done, so even if it's a committee that might be our second choice, but they have the bandwidth to do it, I would rather assign it to them. So,
Yes,
Mhm.
no, I quite agree with that. And just the fact that this is an open space and recreation plan does suggest that Conservation Commission and Recreation Commission are going to be fairly heavily involved. It's no surprise.
yeah.
But yeah, I think, realistically, uh, there's probably not an expectation that every one of these action items will actually be accomplished, particularly some of the longer term ones. But be that as it may, this is going to be our attempt to give us a best shot at accomplishing as many of these things as can be accomplished.
Yeah.
So,
And we may come out with 2 new committees that I think will be valuable to a lot of these items. So
Yeah.
if
yep, I know.
it
Yeah,
comes out,
right.
that's great.
Yeah, I know, people have this tendency to say we don't need another committee, and yeah, to a large extent, I agree with that. I'm not in favor of creating committees that are not really going to be useful. But what we've identified here is a couple of, potential new committees are, we've actually got something that we think is best done by another committee.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
Okay, great.
so with all that said, I will take and collate these results and turn that into a document, or sorted by responsible party, showing who gets what action items, and I'll try to construct a memo of some sort to be sent to each one of the committees identified as a lead, saying, this is what we've assigned to you.
Okay.
So I can work on that. Shouldn't take me too much work to get that put together. So
Right.
with that kind of covers the agenda item of assigning primary responsibility. The next agenda item was next steps, and I think we've probably just talked about the next steps. Is, this is our first cut at, who's the lead on what, and the next step is to circulate that with all the parties identified here, and get their feedback from that. And we will revise the assignment of responsibilities as needed,
Mhm.
and go from there. So, is there anything else that either of you can think of as what we need to do next?
No, the only thing I would just add to, like, maybe add into your memo to them is just maybe, like a timeline, like, get back to us within 2 to 3 weeks in terms of, your feelings on this. So then we can try to go from there, right?
Right.
Shouldn't take them too long. They probably don't need 2 to 3 weeks, but
Yeah.
Yeah, between
I don't
meetings,
know.
though, I think you're right. I think that's plenty of time.
yeah,
Like if we're meeting once a month, they should be able to get back to us before we
Yeah.
meet.
yeah. So then with that being said, do we want to like push our next meeting into the new year, given that you might disseminate this to us and then disseminate to the committees, and we might have to wait a couple of weeks?
That's probably not a bad idea to, set our next meeting for January.
Yeah.
December is always a tough month to have a lot of meetings in. And
So, if you get it out to them within the next 2 to 3 weeks, let's say, it gives them 2 to 3 weeks, and then we look into January. Yeah. Okay.
so we've been meeting on the third Wednesday of the month.
Mhm.
Do we want to, for the moment at least, continue that and
Sure.
plan the third Wednesday in January?
Sure.
And hopefully our other two members, Alicia and Steve, both of them were unable to make it tonight for various reasons. And I will make sure they're included. And if 7 o'clock on a Wednesday is problematic, then we could consider another meeting time or another date. I know Alicia said that she couldn't make it at 7 because of family obligations, but possibly a later meeting time would work better. Possibly another day would work better. So we'll kind of tentatively plan on the third Wednesday of January.
Okay.
We'll try to, I will put it out to the other committee members and see if that time works. If not, if there's a better time for all of us together, we can consider another time.
Certainly gives them enough time, especially this is a Zoom call, so yeah.
Yeah.
Enough head time and certainly if you don't have to be in person, it should work out. Okay, great.
Right. So the last item on our agenda before we adjourn is our minutes of the previous meeting.
I vote to approve the minutes as, what's the word?
As
Yes, I amended.
drafted.
Because you sent me,
That one could little correction, yeah.
Right.
There was another one, but I couldn't remember what it was afterwards, but it was inconsequential.
yeah, there was a tense, I don't have it in front of me right now, but there was a grammar tense that was incorrect and like the second or third paragraph. And so, whoa. And so then I changed that as well. So,
Yeah.
yeah, so I think you meant the word amended, Anne
Yeah,
Marie.
so,
Thank
right,
you.
so the motion is to approve the minutes as corrected.
Yes, thank you.
Second.
Moved and seconded. I have to ask for discussion, but there's probably it's already been fully discussed.
Mhm.
With no further discussion, we'll take a roll call vote. Anne Marie,
Aye.
Doreen,
DeFazio, aye.
and Dave votes aye. Motion carried unanimously. The minutes are approved as corrected and will be submitted to the town clerk and at Doreen's convenience.
Tomorrow.
And with that, there being no further business, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Have to take a roll call vote on this too. Anne Marie,
Foley, aye.
Doreen,
DeFazio, aye.
and Dave votes aye. Motion carried unanimously. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.